At the airport, 5 police marksmen tried to do the impossible, kill 8 terrorists. They got 1. Another scrambled under a helicopter and began to shoot out the lights. Now it was too dangerous for the police to fire. There was a lull and a false report that the hostages were safe, a report heard in Cleveland by the Burgers.
We're certain that had he been free, we would have got a telephone call, and the hours went by, and we didn't hear, and then the news came on at 11 o'clock that, that they were under siege at the airport.
Suddenly, a terrorist threw a grenade into one of the helicopters. Indiscriminate shooting erupted. 5 Arabs and 1 policeman were killed. As for the Israelis,
there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
President Nixon had called, and he asked if there was anything he could do personally. I said I would appreciate it if they could bring David home. And he did send an Army plane and crew, and they flew him back to Cleveland.
The other 10 bodies were flown to Israel. Munich's Olympics had become a tragic fiasco. Olympic President Avery Brundage didn't make it any better.
The games must go on. We declare today a day of mourning and will continue all the events 1 day later than originally scheduled.
What could be worse than having athletes murdered for political reasons? And all Olympics have had political problems, but nothing to approach this. And the idea that it would be treated as somehow an interruption of this spectacle, and that we should get back to it as soon as possible, I think offended an awful lot of people. And I think the feeling was that it was unseemly.
The memorial service that had been proclaimed for 2 murdered Israelis now honored the memories of 11. The Black September terrorists had blackened that September for the whole world.
Two more facts, 2 more thoughts. Fact, tennis was the fastest growing sport that summer. Thought, tennis is not a team sport. Fact, The Godfather was the most popular movie that summer. Thought, it's about power through terrorism. Come back to the future of the summer of 1972.
I want reliable people, people that aren't going to be carried away. I mean, we're not murderers, in spite of what this undertaker says.
Welcome back to the legacy of the summer of '72. Some of the truths that were hidden between the lines that summer would emerge later in bold-faced type. And in the case of Watergate, not very much later.
I, Richard Nixon, do solemnly swear.
Before President Nixon would fall, he was re-elected by the biggest electoral mandate since Franklin Roosevelt's in 1936. Nixon carried 49 states. In the Washington Post of September 29th, Woodward and Bernstein reported that former Attorney General John Mitchell had controlled a secret slush fund to finance dirty tricks against the Democrats. And so the revelations that would lead 2 years later to the resignation of Richard Nixon were underway.
Thomas Eagleton survived not being a vice presidential candidate. He retired in 1987. He'd been a member of the United States Senate for 18 years. Otherwise, he seemed perfectly normal.
After Munich, the Olympics became so security conscious that by 1984 in Los Angeles, there were 7,000 athletes and 19,000 security personnel. In Cleveland, there is a privately commissioned memorial to David Berger. There's a memorial plaque to all 11 murdered Israelis in Munich. Well, there it is the way it was in the summer of 1972. I covered the Republican convention in Miami Beach, took 2 of my daughters. Victoria, age 11, got heat exhaustion, too much sun. There was too much of a lot of things at that convention. Inside the hall, there was too much arrogance. Outside, there was outrage about too much war. And all over the country, there were too many voices trying to sell too much. It seemed that everybody was trying to eat the whole thing. And somebody had heisted the Alka-Seltzer.
The summer of 1972, it was the summer Grease opened and Hair closed. Crosby, Stills, and Nash stopped playing with Young, Simon stopped playing with Garfunkel, and Dylan stopped playing. In Cleveland, an annual parade of black militants to honor those killed by police was canceled for lack of interest. Marching was being replaced by jogging. The best-selling book was I'm Okay, You're Okay. Maybe, if you read between the lines, the summer of 1972 was the summer the 1960s ended. And so it goes. Also in the summer of 1972,
Arthur Bremer was sentenced to 63 years in prison for shooting presidential candidate George Wallace.
the Supreme Court ruled that capital punishment, as now administered, was cruel and unusual punishment and therefore unconstitutional.
Tropical Storm Agnes killed 134 people and caused severe flooding in 10 eastern states.
Fiddler on the Roof passed the play Life with Father as the longest-running Broadway show in history, then closed 2 weeks later.
Blues singer Jimmy Rushing, William T. Grant, the department store tycoon, William Hopalong Cassidy Boyd, and Oscar Levant died.
Actress Jane Fonda visited Hanoi.
For a transcript of this broadcast, send $3 to Our World Transcripts, 2 John Street, New York, New York, 10038.
For the Our World Viewer Guide, write to Community Relations, ABC, 1330 Avenue of the Americas, New York, New York, 10019.